Alrighty everybody, thanks for clicking on this video. James Cards FC here. Welcome back to the channel. With all the content going around over the past couple days in regards to players that could really explode for the World Cup. World Cup is coming with shorter prospects. Are people interested in that sort of thing? I saw Sunday League Investors had a video on it with Trike, and you had Calcio Cards do a whole video on players for the World Cup. So I wanted to go ahead and do one of my own videos for players that I believe could explode in price for the World Cup, who and why. I know I have a video about this already on my channel that is now, I think, 5 months old, so that one's pretty outdated at this point. The methodology in it is correct, but now that we're so much later in the window, some of the checklists and the players might not be the same as what I had previously. So I wanted to go ahead and give an updated version of that, and these will be the players that I believe could explode in price during the World Cup, and more importantly, why and what kinds of players they are. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move into the type of player that can explode. So let me move myself. Actually, looks like I'm good there. The type of player that can explode. It's not going to be as simple as scoring a few goals or having a deep tournament run. So let's take a look at the NBA playoffs for an example of what we're looking for here. So on the left, you have Jalen Brunson, and on the right, you have Luka Doncic. Both of you guys play for the same exact team, the Dallas Mavericks, so they both went the exact same distance in the playoffs, but their cards reacted very differently. So Jalen Brunson comes out of nowhere and has a huge first series, and his prices explode 300% in a short time period. Luka is hurt for the first series, if I remember right, so Jalen Brunson gets the start for a few games, and he looks really good, and so his prices explode because he has low populations and he's not very expensive, and people get really excited about it. They FOMO and they buy at these crazy peaks before it obviously crashes over the next few months as interest in him wanes. And then you look at Luka Doncic during that same time period. He returns from his injury and then ends up playing like a top 5 player in the NBA, but his prices only increase 15% in a short period, despite the fact that he played much better than Brunson did after his injury, and after he was healed, he played much better than Brunson. He only got that 15% increase. And that's simply because of how many more cards Luka has on the market, how much he was already priced in for this performance, and all that stuff that I've talked about ad nauseum in other videos. Feel free to go through my channel. I talk about this at least 5 or 6 different times, but the players that explode in the short term are really the ones that have low expectations, low prices, and a low number of cards. So that's the point here at the very bottom, which is for prices to explode, and by explode, I mean like 200, 300, 400% increases. You're really looking for a young player with low expectations or price, a playing time opportunity, and few cards. And all these things work together to create these type of spikes right here, as long as the performance aspect ends up hitting like it did for Brunson. So let's go ahead and go through the groups of the tournament, and we'll talk about some guys that I think are the types of guys that could see these explosions in prices. So we're going to start with Group A. This is the group with Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, and Netherlands, and the player I'm picking to explode would be Moises Caicedo from Ecuador. He currently also plays for, I believe, Brighton in the Premier League, so he's a Premier League midfielder. He's 20 years old, has low expectations and prices. He's the starting midfielder. He's very likely to be the starting midfielder for Ecuador, and he's only in the World Cup sticker set and Mosaic so far in terms of like good cards, not talking about 365 or stickers from lower ranking leagues that get highly produced, or Premier League stickers, that sort of thing. These are the cards that people sort of gravitate towards in this market, and so he only has 2 of them at this point. So that's really good. Not a lot of options out there, so if FOMO does kick in, there's not a lot of cards or stickers to go around. So I like Caicedo from that aspect. I also like that Ecuador, nobody's really talking about them, but given the group, they actually have a somewhat okay shot at getting out. Senegal is probably the favorite over them to make it out. Netherlands obviously is the favorite of the entire group, but I don't think it's impossible for Ecuador to make some noise. So he would be my pick for a guy to explode, get that easy 200% increase. I say easy just because he's so cheap right now. I think he could get an increase like that, but of course he has to perform. So in terms of honorable mentions, I put Cody Gakpo from the Netherlands. He would have been my pick at least a month or 2 ago, but he's getting a little too much hype on social media, in my opinion, and his prices are really starting to pick up as people see how good he has been in the Dutch League over the past couple seasons. So he would have been my pick, but I think too much is getting priced in right now. So if Netherlands does go really deep, he possibly could explode, but if they just make the round of 16 or something like that. I don't see it. He would really need to have a really good tournament at this point because a lot is now starting to get priced in. There's a lot of hype. There's transfer rumor hype. And so he would have been a great option a couple months ago if you got in on him. But now I think the point is getting passed on Cody Gakpo at this point. And then we'll move into Jose Cifuentes. I take him as another honorable mention, also from Ecuador. He has a MLS Sapphire card right here. Not sure why it denotes him as a defender. He's actually a midfielder for the LA MLS team. So he has some decent goal involvements there. He'll probably start for Ecuador along with Caicedo in the midfield. So again, just another option if Ecuador does something. I think his cards are so cheap. This Sapphire rookie is like $3 or $4, so it doesn't really take a lot for that card to go from $3 to $10 to $20. So those would be the guys I'm looking at, or the types of guys I would be looking at in Group A. So same methodology, let's move to Group B. The player I'm picking here to explode would be Brennan Johnson from Wales. He is a forward, 21 years old, with low expectations and price. He started both of the recent friendly matches for Wales, didn't score any goals, but Wales didn't really have a strong window, so I wouldn't hold that against him too much. And if he does end up starting for Wales at the World Cup, he'll start against the United States, and he'll start against England, which is a lot of eyes on a young player that he's actually a Premier League player. If you're not familiar, he plays for Nottingham Forest. I think he has a couple goal involvements this season, but nothing too insane. But yeah, a 21-year-old Premier League forward that is getting some minutes for Wales, and he has started 2 of their most recent friendly matches for them. I really like that he's only in the World Cup sticker set and these Leaf autographed cards so far. So again, you have that scarcity, that FOMO can really set in when you have a super limited number of cards. So the fact that he only has a few is really, really nice for him. And so if he does anything for Wales, again, I think that's the sort of situation where you're looking for where you can get that 200 to 300% increase, because these autograph cards are probably somewhere in the $20 to $30 range. It doesn't take a lot for him to score a goal and those to go from 20 to 60. Same for the sticker. There are a few dollars. It doesn't take a lot for that to go from a few dollars to 10 to 20. So Brennan Johnson would be my guy for this group. I specifically did not pick a United States or England guy for this group to be the pick to explode, because I think a lot is really priced into those guys already. I would like to choose Foden. If I was confident in England going really deep in the tournament, I think Foden has a chance to get sort of that face of the hobby type hype, especially if France goes out early or if Brazil goes out and England ends up being the end-all be-all team for the tournament. Then I think Foden or Bellingham or whoever you want to pick for England could get some really explosive pricing, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch, and I think a lot is priced in on those guys if they don't make it to like the final. So and then US, obviously I think everything is very, very priced in for them, but I did pick Josh Sargent as an honorable mention because it's really confusing at this point who's going to be the starting number 9 for the United States. So Sargent's prices are actually really, really cheap if he does end up being the starting 9 for the United States. This optic blue or purple velocity out of 125 was $30-something on a recent auction, and that's the sort of thing that could get really explosive if he does end up being the starting number 9 for the United States and scoring a goal or 2 in the World Cup, especially if the U.S. makes it to the knockout phase, and I think that's a really big catalyst for the whole market, really. So Sargent would be a guy that I think is a good honorable mention. And then I also put in Mehdi Taremi. He is the Iran superstar player, center forward. He has some really, really good stats in League One, I believe, that he plays in. Actually, it might be Liga NOS. He plays in one of those 2 leagues, but he has a lot of goal involvements, and he has Champions League goal involvements as well. So he's a really solid player, and if Iran does anything, it'll be because of him, and he has very, very limited sticker or card options. In fact, this 2018 World Cup sticker, I believe, is one of his very, very first stickers, and this is the gold Swiss version, where for Kylian Mbappe, it's like 3 or 4 times more expensive than the base, and for Taremi right here, this gold sticker will cost you like $1. So, in my opinion, that's the sort of player that can get pretty explosive. If Iran makes it out of the group, that $1 sticker is probably $20 or $30, at least in the short term. So, those are the guys that I would be looking at for Group B. Again, I would really like to include more players for England just because I think they have some really, really cool young talent, but I think too much is priced in at this point. And with that, we'll go ahead and move to Group C. This is the group headlined by Argentina and Mexico, as well as Poland and Saudi Arabia. And the player that I believe to explode or have the best chance of exploding is Julian Alvarez for Argentina. He is 22 years old and he has a low price on some cheap issues. And Argentina has a lot of injuries, so it's possible that not only does he get a lot of minutes, he could also start for Argentina in the group stage, depending on what happens with the injuries they have at the forward position. So keep an eye on that. But I also really like that Alvarez has very few good cards. I'll take you through a few of these. This FIFA 365 card I would avoid specifically because you could have ordered this from the website and a lot of people did, and so there are a ton of these all in pretty good condition. This one I actually like, as well as any of the FIFA 365 ones specifically from Argentina, because those you could not order from the website, you had to get them from Argentina. So I think this is one of them, but please do your additional research, and I would personally be looking at the ones from Argentina specifically. This one's a global release. Ones like this are Argentinian release, so if you want to go deep on Alvarez, I'd recommend doing that research. This FIFA 365 sticker right here, same thing as the card. You order them on the website, a lot of people did, and there's way too many of these. And then he also has the Panini World Cup stickers, so I like the variations of those as it pertains to this World Cup. He's also going to be in the National Treasure set that just got released. His cards haven't made their way onto the market yet, but I imagine those will be very expensive, unfortunately. So I would be targeting more things like this, where it's a $5, $10, $15, $20 card and it could go to $50, rather than targeting something that's going to be a few $100s and hoping it goes to $1,000. So that's where I stand on Alvarez right now. It's possible, and I think likely at this point, that he does make the Prism set. So when that comes out, those cards will probably be pretty popular. But I think it might be unlikely to get those graded or anything crazy like that by the time the World Cup comes out. But keep an eye on checklists for Alvarez, because that could have a pretty big effect on his market. With all that being said, honorable mentions here would be actually a guy that I've heard some more chatter on recently, Nikola Zaleski for Poland. He actually started both games for Poland in their most recent friendly window, and he has very, very few cards. I think he only has 2 of these Adrenaline cards, both from this season. Both are like $1 or $2. Again, this is the perfect type of guy where the cards are $1, and then they easily can go to 20 if he has some good performances. So I really like it from that perspective. Don't personally know a lot about him, but his stats are somewhat interesting in the league that he does play in. He gets some minutes, but not a lot of goal involvements. But the fact he's starting for Poland always brings that sort of optimism, and his price entry point is so cheap right now that I like him as a guy that could get some pretty easy increases if he does anything. And then a guy that I've talked about previously on this channel, Irving Lozano for Mexico. I know he has a lot of cards out there. I know Mexico doesn't look that great right now, but if Mexico does anything, it's going to be because of Lozano. His Prism variations and parallels are actually pretty cheap right now, so I don't think it's the worst play, but I would much prefer the 2 guys that I mentioned before him. Moving on to Group D, this is actually one of the more interesting groups in my opinion, both in the tournament itself as well as prospecting. You have France and then 3 teams that may have a decent shot at all fighting each other for that second or third position in the group. So the player I picked to explode was Andres Skov Olsen of Denmark. He's a 22-year-old forward. He has low price on cheap issues. He is the starting forward for Denmark, or at least he did start in their most recent friendly matches, or at least one of them when I was looking at the lineups. So he's getting some starters minutes, and it's possible he could start against a team like France, and he could start against lesser teams like Australia and maybe get some interesting moments there. He also has very, very few cards. This 2021 Score rookie card, as well as its variations, are not easy to find. I think it's probably because nobody really knows who he is. They don't really list his stuff, but these have been really hard to find, at least in my opinion. I have a saved filter, and the variations and parallels literally never come up. So either somebody else is looking at him at the same time I am, or nobody even knows who this guy is. So he has that, and he also has these World Cup stickers, of course. I like both of those. If I was interested in going deep on Skov Olsen, he's very, very cheap, and so again, I don't think it takes a lot for his cards to go from a few dollars to $10 or $20 if he does anything. So with that, we'll move to Hannibal for Manchester United, and now he's playing for, I believe, Birmingham City, and he's getting some minutes there now. He's started a past couple of games for them, and he also plays for Tunisia. He's probably going to start for them. He's one of their more valuable players, at least according to Transfer Market. So I like him from that perspective. His Sapphires are super cheap. This is like a $3 or $4 card. The parallels are in the $20, $30, $40 range. And so again, if he does anything, it's not that hard for those cards to have some nice percentage increases for Hannibal. And then a guy that is already pretty expensive, but he really doesn't have a lot of cards out there, and there's a chance France goes really deep and he starts for them. I like Aurelien. He is the midfielder for Real Madrid, and he's actually been getting preferred minutes over Camavinga, so I imagine France as well will be using him over Camavinga. So if I was going to be targeting one of the two French midfielders, I would prefer to target Aurelien because he has less cards, and I think he has a better chance at playing more minutes. So from that perspective, I like him as the best prospect to go after for France, at least in my opinion. His cards I know are already expensive, but if France goes really, really deep, they do have that potential to grow some more in value, but just probably not the percentage rates you would have for guys like these. Alrighty, let's move on to Group E, which is probably, in my opinion, the toughest group at the World Cup. I could see literally any combination of these teams getting out, except for maybe Costa Rica, but even then, they're not that bad of a squad. Spain, Germany, Costa Rica, and Japan. The player I'm picking to explode is a guy I've talked about again a few times on this channel, Ferran Torres from Spain. His cards are just really, really cheap. He's 22 years old. His cards are insanely cheap. He has very low expectations, but he's been starting at forward in each of the friendly matches for Spain, so I know he's not starting for Barcelona. I know he's not getting a lot of minutes and not a lot of buzz outside of what he's doing for the national team, but for whatever reason, he keeps getting a lot of minutes for the national team, and so if that continues into the World Cup, Spain is a really decent squad. They can make the knockouts. They can make it a little further than knockouts, and he's going to be starting a lot of games. So I really like it from the perspective of just how cheap it is and the opportunity out there. He also is in mainstream sets, so like this card, for example, if you had the Bukayo Saka version of this card in a PSA 9, it's a few $100. This Ferran Torres is like $15. Same for this ticket right here. It's really, really cheap. And same for this sticker in a PSA 10. It's like $20. Vinicius Junior's is like $120 or something like that. So from that perspective, he's so cheap. He has potential to get a lot of minutes on a really good team. And so I like him for all those reasons. Then a guy like Kai Havertz, I know he's another one of those expensive ones, but it looks like Germany might be playing a false nine sort of role for him where he's going to be the main guy in terms of goal scoring for that team. And if that is the case, I really like Kai Havertz to get a nice bump on his prices. I know he's already expensive, so he's not going to get like a 200, 300% increase, but something like a 60% increase. I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't think it'll get that crazy for Kai Havertz because a lot of it is already priced in because he's such a good prospect, but the fact that he is potentially the number 9 for Germany, and Germany's a really good team and they could have a deep run, makes him very attractive in my opinion. Then we have Daichi Kamada from Japan. Actually really interesting. This is one of the better players in the Bundesliga this season. I'm not sure how many people keep track of Frankfurt or the Bundesliga teams or anything like that, but he's actually a really, really good player, and he's one of the main players for Japan, and if Japan gets out of the group, he's probably going to be a big reason why, and his cards are super, super cheap. Alrighty, and with that, we'll move to Group F. This is my least favorite group for sort of prospecting. As you can see, I didn't pick any player to explode. I just don't see it with this group of Belgium, Canada, Morocco, and Croatia. All the expected starters on the two heavy favorites are older, so Belgium and Croatia, all their main starters and even most of their backups are pretty much between the ages of 25 and 35, and that's just not all that attractive in terms of prospecting. So not really a big fan of that. Canada's young players are too priced in or have too many rookies, in my opinion. That would be Alphonso Davies, too priced in, and then Jonathan David, too many rookies. So don't like either of them that much. And then nothing exciting on the Moroccan team, in my opinion, so avoiding that as well. I do give a couple of honorable mentions. I like CDK for Belgium, but I don't think he's going to get a lot of minutes, so not really sure how well that's going to go. And then Ismail Kone as well for Canada. This is actually his very first card. It's on Topps now right now, so if you want to make a play on it, I guess that's out there for you. But he's been on the bench for the past couple of matches in the friendlies for Canada, and I think he's come on as well. Hasn't really done anything, but he did score a goal in the MLS playoffs, and this is his first card, so perhaps there's something there if he does get minutes at the World Cup. Then we move into Group G. This is commonly referred to as Brazil's group, and the player I'm picking to explode would be Vinicius Junior for Brazil. I know this is not normally the type of player I would pick to explode, but I think this is a really unique case where Vinicius Junior is, yes, expensive, but he's not close to Mbappe Haaland level prices, and he is the starter on the favorite team in the tournament, and he has a top opportunity to be the next face of the hobby if Brazil does win the tournament and if he is one of those leading players for them. Very similar to Mbappe with France when he won in 2018. Mbappe was not the best player on the team, but he ended up being a superstar of the tournament. There could be a situation where Vinicius Jr. is that for Brazil this season, and that would do wonders for his market, in my opinion, because then he has a World Cup, he has the same number of Ballon d'Ors as Mbappe, which is 0, and he also has a Champions League win, which Mbappe, of course, does not have. And so from that perspective, their legacies start getting a little bit closer in terms of their hierarchy, and so he really starts to join in that Mbappe-Haaland group if Brazil wins the tournament and if he plays really well. Obviously, that has to happen in order for this to happen, but if it does, I think he has a lot of room to grow, especially considering he really doesn't have a lot of different rookie card sets. So for all those reasons, I really like Vinicius Jr., but again, Brazil has to win the tournament to get those sort of explosive prices. Whereas with a lot of these other guys, it's just going to take a few games. Like an Andres Skov Olsen, all he has to do is score in a couple group stage matches, and he'll probably get a 300% increase because his prices are so cheap and he has so few cards. That sort of effect is not going to be there for Vinicius. He needs to have a deep run, and he needs to be playing really well for the best team in the tournament. So, with all that being said, honorable mentions here. Dusan Vlahovic for Serbia. These were kind of tough honorable mentions. Again, I don't really like this group either. Dusan's stickers just gotten so much cheaper than it used to be at the peak, so maybe there's something there. Maybe some of his other cards, but yeah, Dusan, interesting young player for Serbia, just because his hype has pulled back a lot. And then Brian Buemo, not exactly sure how to pronounce that, for Cameroon. He is one of the only Premier League players on the Cameroon squad, so if they do anything, it'll likely be large part due to him. So if you want to really go long on somebody, he would be one of my choices as a guy that is really, really cheap, and maybe he scores a couple goals and gets some hype. And finally, we'll ease up with Group H, bringing up the end of today's video. Actually, another one of my most interesting groups, in my opinion. This is Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, and South Korea. I could see any combination of these 4 teams making it out. But yeah, I think this is a really fun group. Player I'm choosing to explode is actually Federico Valverde of Uruguay and also of Real Madrid, of course. He is 24 years old, and this is more of a play of, I think it's just way too cheap what his cards are right now for a world-class player. He's going to be the best player on a possible knockout-level team in Uruguay, and he's also a very key player for Real Madrid. He had a great season last year. He's having a great season again this year, and so I don't really think the hobby respects him as a world-class type player, but if he is the best player on a knockout-bound team, perhaps he starts getting some more of that buzz, especially if he scores a bunch of goals and gets some assists. So I really like Federico Valverde from this group. I'll skip Lee Kangin and just talk about Leao for a second. I really like Rafael Leao as well for Portugal, especially with the injuries that have come up for Portugal on the forward positions and the fact that Ronaldo is really out of form right now. Perhaps Leao actually ends up being their best forward in the tournament, and that would be huge for his market. But again, a lot needs to go right for that to happen, but it's possible that Leao gets some big opportunities here for Portugal, and so I like that. I also like that he has very, very few rookie cards. I know he's in this most recent Topps season, so he has a lot of Topps cards on the market, but if you go back to 2019, his rookie season, he really doesn't have a lot of cards, and so from that perspective, I think FOMO could kick in pretty well on him if Portugal does end up going deeper and if he is starting and scoring goals. Flipping back to Lee Kangin of South Korea, he actually hasn't really featured much for them in the friendlies and prior to that in the qualifying window, but he's playing really, really well currently in La Liga for a side that's not really performing that well. So obviously he's doing something right if he's getting goal involvements on a team that's not performing very well. So from that perspective, if he does get minutes and he does score, his cards again are super, super cheap. So perhaps you can get that sort of price velocity on him as well. Alrighty, and wrapping it all up with the conclusion. So, in conclusion, there will be players that explode. Oops, I just realized that I am blocking some of the words there. Perfect. There will be players that explode due to performance at the World Cup, but in my opinion, based on what we've seen from other sports, it will likely be the players that are currently out of the spotlight with low performance expectations. So, important point here, if you guess right on any of these super speculative plays, please get out ASAP, and these are the examples of what you're looking for here. Here's the Jalen Brunson example, to the moon and right back down. Here's Jordan Poole doing basically the same thing that Jalen Brunson did, to the moon and back down. And then in football, American football, you have Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl, to the moon and right back down. So if you get right on any of the guys that you're looking at or any of the guys in this video, anybody that's out of the spotlight and is sort of a speculative play, if they spike like any of these guys, please get out. Like, don't carry it any further. Just go ahead and get out, take your money. and move on to the next thing. Because every example, I could have thrown up 10 more of these and they're all going to do the same thing. If you hit on a super psychic play, go ahead, take the win, and get out. And celebrate on Instagram, tag me in it. I would love that. All that fun stuff. Tag me in it, and I'll tell you to get out. Thank you so much. Perfect. Glad we're on the same page there. Your move here is to get in and then get out. Good, we're clear. Okay, with that all out of the way, the James Cards FC official top 3 prediction. This is just for fun. I personally have no positions in any of these guys currently, and the only one I probably might get a position in would be Andres Skov Olsen, but I guess by putting out this video, I'm sort of getting rid of my opportunity to get in low on him. But without further ado, these would be my top 3 guys that I like. Julian Alvarez, I think he has huge opportunity with Argentina being a tournament favorite and the injuries to their forwards, and he has very few card options. So I think that all of that put together makes Julian Alvarez very, very interesting. Vinicius Jr., like I've said, huge opportunity to become the face of the hobby. Prices are not at Mbappe Haaland levels, but if he does have a huge tournament, he does, I believe, at least in my opinion, start getting in that conversation with those two. And for that to happen, in the hobby sense, his prices have a long way to go. And then Andres Skov Olsen, again, he's just insanely cheap. He has very few cards. He's young. It's possible he's going to be starting for a team with an easy group with a route to the knockout phases. He's a really good player in the Belgian league currently, so for all those reasons, I like Skov Olsen. So those would be my 3 guys. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed your time in this sort of disjointed video. I caught myself stopping a lot there. Hope it wasn't too annoying, but again, thank you guys so much for the support recently. Let me know your thoughts. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.